Welcome, everyone. I'm Katie Sorensen, the Director of Outreach and Communications here at the Museum for Art and Wood. If you're unfamiliar with us, we're a museum that's dedicated to art in the material of wood. And as you entered our building, you walked through our amazing museum store that has one-of-a-kind works by local artists, regional and international, as well as unique handmade objects, books, lighting, and jewelry. And right now you're seated in our main gallery, which rotates about 3 to 4 times a year. And currently on view, we have our brand new exhibition that opened this past Friday, A Usable Past, Reflections on a Nation and Its Inheritance. This exhibition brought together sculpture by 12 artists who reckon with America's layered histories. So I do recommend you taking a little bit of time and experiencing these amazing pieces of art. Upstairs we have our permanent collection on view in an open study format for you to explore, as well as our research library that hosts rotating thematic collection exhibitions. And we have our next one opening on December 5th, titled American Graffiti, Painting, Dyeing, and Surface Design in Wood. Tonight, I'd like to also share with you, as part of the global community, the museum understands its responsibility to contribute positively to the planet's health and ecosystems, while educating our public on the importance and character of the forest, trees, and wood byproducts, on sustainability and environmental health. Exhibitions, educational programs, and events speak in the language of art to instill appreciation and responsibility for stewardship of the planet's ecosystems. The museum also strives to reduce environmental harm through its operations, facilities, and day-to-day decision-making. And today we have 2 important organizations that are going to be talking about sustainability. We have the Flax PA Project and Common Object Studio. So I'm going to hand it over to Janelle.
I'm Janelle Weisbach, Director of Education with the PA Flax Project, and I'd like to introduce Heidi Barr, the CEO and co-founder of the PA Flax Project, and Justin Beetzel with Common Object. And yes, we are thankful to be here tonight. Thank you so much, Katie. And anything else that you needed to share with us? Okay.
No, just
Thank you.
having you in space.
All right, great. Just so this is us and taken. You want to wave back here, who works with Common Object. Great. So, great. I just wanted to do intros and hand it over to you.
Thanks, Janelle. Justin and I were trying to decide how we met earlier. This happens a lot in this work. You meet someone, you immediately feel like you've known them forever, you share a mission, and then you do a thing like this, and they're like, oh, it's time for introductions. First, talk about how you met. How did we meet, Justin?
I feel like, is anyone familiar with PA Fiber Shed? So for those not familiar, it's a group that's really pushing how do we create a growing fiber organization here in our area. And I think somehow through that, we've connected, our brains have crossed, and somehow we ended up seeing each other in Washington, D.C. at an event down there focused on sustainability that you were a panelist on. And it's been a really great thing. You'll see in our conversation here kind of why we're doing this together. We're on different ends of the trajectory of this project. One from the kind of the ground coming up, and us kind of on the trying to sell this into a market side of things. So yeah, it's been a really great journey.
Yeah. And it's amazing to be in this space because I met Katie a while ago, I don't know, years, when I managed a farmer's market around the corner from here. And so it's really pretty amazing how in this space of art and industry and environmentalism, like if you do it long enough, like your world folds in on itself in a really good way. And that's how we know it's working, right? It's expanding, and we're all doing it together. So it's super special to be in this space and doing this. Yeah. So we're going to talk first about the PA Flax Project, and then Justin is going to talk about Common Object. So Pennsylvania Flax Project was founded in 2020 by myself and co-founder Emma DeLong, who is a CSA diversified vegetable farmer in Pottstown. We met on March 12th, so if you remember that year, that was just right before the shutdown of the pandemic. And we met because a mutual friend thought maybe I would make her a linen wedding dress, which I never did. But instead, within an hour of meeting, we had started talking about how flax for linen is a sustainable agricultural product that can create sustainable textiles and has a history of growing in Pennsylvania. And we just kind of were like, why aren't we doing this? Like, this is one solution, and we could probably achieve it. And she said, well, I have an eighth of an acre on the farm getting ready to go into cover crop. Do you want to plant some flax for linen and see what happens? And I said, yes. So here we are. It's been a journey.
Sure. And I just want to share our mission. So to reestablish the to reestablish long dormant fiber flax industry in Pennsylvania and the greater Mid-Atlantic region. We're doing this by building long-term relationships with farmers and creating mill infrastructure for stage 1 processing of flax fiber. We are a co-op, and the idea of working with the farmers is extremely important, and being able to provide a place for them. Our end goal is a mill, so being able to provide a place for them to then actually process this fiber is our goal. And then our vision with environmental responsibility, economic and social justice as our guiding principles. We will create a regional fiber flax supply chain and create economic growth that's good for our workers in our community and the planet. And guided by our values, we're pursuing our vision of a thriving, regenerative regional textile industry.
Yes, we are. It's really hard work, but it's very satisfying. So we are a cooperative, which Janelle alluded to, and as a cooperative, what we offer our members, we're currently a cooperative of 2, but soon we'll be growing. We offer agricultural education resources. So flax, although it has a long history of growing in Pennsylvania, is a new crop to this generation's farmers. The industry has been dormant here. I just found out last week that the last flax mill in this region, or close to this region, was in Massachusetts and closed in 1949. So the industry collapsed after the Second World War with the advent of synthetic textiles. It was already struggling to compete with cheap cotton that was subsidized by the labor of enslaved people. And the early advent of the cotton gin gave it an economic boost in the first industrial revolution. And then once the rise of synthetic textiles came onto the market, and they were cheap because, well, big oil. And so it really faltered after the Second World War, all the way across the country. The last mill here closed in, right about 1950. The last mill on the West Coast closed right around 1960. And so we will be, along with that education, we have purchased specialized harvesting equipment, which I'll tell you a lot more about in a later slide, but that will be shared by farmers in the co-op so that they can have a mechanized harvest at scale of fiber flax. And then also transportation, both of that equipment from farm to farm and also of the flax to the mill, which we also need to provide. You see we have a long list. And then we're working on developing sales contracts for products that we'll be producing at the mill, which is where this relationship comes in, and building out that market. So it's really, it sounds insane when I say it, but it's really like building out the supply chain and the market regionally, right? But it's possible. I have a business plan that proves it. And this is our strategy for that. We're currently, from 2020 to 2023, 24 was all research and development, very small scale, all hand planting, hand harvesting, hand weeding, hand processing, everything by hand. Really beautiful, really romantic, great community builder, really hard work, not gonna pay a living wage. And so we tacked in, we hired consultants, we started building relationships in Europe and across North America. We got our business plan in line and we applied for a big grant and we got really lucky. In early 2024, we received the USDA Agricultural Marketing Services Organic Market Development Grant. It's a lot of words. $1.8 million. It allowed us to hire staff, travel to Europe, rent an office, like so many things it allowed us to do to increase our programming. We got our harvesting equipment, we could pay for someplace to store it. And it's just really allowed us to scale in a way that I don't know how else we would have done it. So that's where we are now. We're in stage one, the agricultural stage, where we're scaling agriculture. We're completing all of the pre-mill development studies for implementing our mill. We're identifying locations, probable locations for the mill. So we're looking to choose a location by the end of this year. And we're looking to we'll probably have 50 acres in the ground this year, and then next year we'll have 500, and then 3,000. So that sounds insane too, but that is a model that they do in Europe, and we are following an existing model. So all of this is built on following an existing model, and we have good relationships with people who are doing it, so we're getting great mentorship. But we have to raise a lot of money though, so if anybody has any suggestions or would like to help us, we are gonna have to raise money for that mill still. So it's a big ticket item, but modest investment for a whole industry. And then we'll move into mill development stage, hopefully somewhere in 2020, late 2027, early 2028, we'll start implementing the mill in the real world, like breaking ground. And by Q4 2028, hope to have that mill online. And then we'll be in mill stabilization and expansion, where we will stabilize the mill operations so that it becomes a self-supporting, sustainable, regional scale mill, processing 3,000 to 4,000 acres annually of flax fiber, and working as consultants to help other people in other regions close to us to do the same thing. So the idea is to have a bunch of interconnected, regional scale flax mills producing product.
This is the beautiful flax plant. This is what you would find, I think, if you looked up on Wikipedia. And it's showing all the components of the plant. You'll see the beautiful long stem leaves. You'll see seed pods there, the beautiful blossoms. And in the background, you see this is actually the image of our 2020 crop. That's fantastic. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So and you'll see the seed bowls, all those beautiful little bits up top. The bloom didn't quite happen, I imagine.
Already happened.
It already happened, but they're green. They're sort of like still green like the plant, and then they'll start to go more golden and dry out. So, and beautiful image of that. And it's called, let me get that full, you say it. I always stumble over this.
It's a hard one. It's Linum usititacinum. And it specifically refers to fiber flax. So there's a difference between plant variety of the flax seed that we eat and the flax that's grown for fiber. And you can eat the seeds off the fiber flax, and you can use the fiber off the flax you eat. But for the best fiber, you grow this variety, and for the best seed, you grow that variety. So, when people say you can get everything off one plant, yes and no. Right? Do you want to talk about that?
So many varieties too, by the way. Yeah, and you can share as much as you want. Yeah, so flax is planted in the early spring, 80 to 100, 90 to 100 days to grow. And sorry.
Do you want me to ramble about that?
You can keep rambling, but yeah, oh right, the seed drill, okay,
Yeah.
the esh drill. So here in the United States, we are working with, speaking with folks out in Lancaster that are able to help us with this drill. So it's 5.5 inch spacing, and in Europe they plant 4 inches. So the proximity of the seeds to one another is very important because it helps tamp down too many weeds coming up. So we do need access to that row spacing for the drill. And Esh is an Amish company out in Lancaster, and we've spoken with them, we've connected with them, and they've been fantastic.
They make
so
this
far.
drill that's pictured there, which is 5.5 inch row spacing, and it's the narrowest drill that you could get in North America, and it just happens to be in Lancaster, so that's great for us. Hopefully they're going to make one with 4 inch row spacing someday. We talked to them. They think we're a little bit nutty, but that's okay. They're like, you're doing what? Growing flags. But they, it's also the same row spacing that you use for planting hemp for fiber. And there's a hemp farmer who got an ag innovation grant to retrofit one of these drills for 4 inch row spacing. And so that was supposed to happen this year, but it didn't, so maybe it will happen next year. Yeah, the row spacing, there's a lot of things about the agriculture that we just can't do here because we don't have the equipment they have in Europe. And that's a big challenge. The row spacing is also really important for the way the plant grows, the diameter of stem for the fiber. These drills are very, very precise. So they drop each seed as they go, and they plant the seeds 1/2 inch away from one another and 1/4 inch deep at this, whatever row spacing you can set them. And that consistency of spacing gives you a consistent diameter of stem, so it gives you your maximum fiber in the plant and the same quality between each plant stem. It's very precise, this industry. This is your slide. Now you talk about culture.
I can talk about like precision as well, but right, like that, even like when you are harvesting it, like for it to then go into the mechanized equipment, which we saw over in Europe, that precision is so vital, the stems and the seeds lining up and to go through the sketching line. Yes, so we would like to grow both this beautiful plant as well as our community, and that's why we're so pleased to have you here tonight. I work with the Square Yard Project so people can actually plant their own flax and grow a 36 by 30 inch square if you or attend one of our events. So we also are connected with Wick Estate, Historical Estate in Germantown, and we have one more this season, November 21st, where we open up to the community to just come and see us produce, we'll actually process all the fiber. Yeah, and one thing that's really special we do each year is have a picnic, and at the bottom right, that's a picture of folks at the picnic and the beautiful field blooming behind us. So those flowers, it was like early June, like we kind of plan out and hope for the best with the bloom, and really have to strategize when that beautiful bloom is happening, and then have our picnic. Some of you have been there. Thank you for those folks that have been there in the rain.
It's kind of great because Val was at the very first one.
Oh, yes.
And Diane was at the one we just had. So
Yes.
that's kind of special. Yeah.
That's Miss Diane up front there. You're like, I made the slide presentation.
Hang out
Yeah.
with us, you'll end up in a slideshow.
But it was a really special day, magical day, and we actually partnered with Schumacher Fabrics up in New York, and that was fantastic. So we worked in tandem to put that event on together. Yeah, just celebrating the beauty of this flax fiber and the harvest that was then to come. Yeah.
And the potential for this. So, in a nutshell, PA Flax Project is working to achieve stage 1 processing of fiber flax. So that means growing it and getting it from field to raw product, where we are going to be a raw materials mill. So this first picture up at the top is our harvester that came from Belgium. It shipped row-row. I didn't know what that meant either. I was like, what do you mean row-row? I had to call somebody who knew somebody in logistics and have them teach me the language so that I could import agricultural equipment. It's like, I don't know what I'm talking about. But I do now. So that's a used harvester, probably from the 90s, bought from a farmer in France through a equipment manufacturer in Belgium.
So tell us what row-row is.
Row-row is roll-on, roll-off. It doesn't fit in a container. It had to roll on and roll off the ship. And they left the lights on when they shipped it, so it didn't roll off because they couldn't start it. Right? The next photograph is a turner. So flax is, it's first pulled and then it's laid down on the ground to ret, which is a process of controlled rotting that breaks down the pectins in the plant so that you can separate the fiber from the woody core. And in that process, you have to turn it once so that it rets evenly. And so that second piece of equipment is a turner, and the woman that loaned us the money to purchase the equipment specified in the loan documents that we named her Tina. So that's Tina Turner. True story. The next photograph is a photograph of our flax laying on the ground retting. And that last photograph on the top is an aspirational photo for next year when our baler actually works and we can get a bale that looks like that. Or actually maybe about 80 of them. Then the other really cool thing about flax is that it's entirely mechanically processed, so there's no chemicals involved at all in processing it from field to spinnable fiber and co-products. So this bottom row, there are some pictures from mills that we visited in Europe in September, like just a minute ago. And that first one is the machine that breaks, which is the mechanical version of this. So the fiber is put through what they call a break. Like if you were doing it by hand, you would just slam that down and break the fiber. This is just a machine that does that. And then it goes through another machine that sketches it. So it goes through a machine with paddles that beat it up. And this is the finished product coming off the line. And those three circles represent what we will produce at the mill. So the top one where they're holding that beautiful fiber over their hand, that is called line. That's the long fiber. That is the fiber that is spun from linen. So only the long fibers become linen yarns. They're also used in a lot of biocomposite applications. And then this picture is the short fibers, or tow. If anybody was ever called a tow head when they were a child, that's where that comes from. And the tow can also be spun. It's just a shorter fiber, so it would be spun into tow cloth or flax, and also is used in a lot of different biocomposite applications. And then that final image is the shive, which is the woody core of the plant that breaks away, and that's used often in the industrial building trades for various things. And I'm sure that maybe, are you going to talk more about that?
And then I want to explain the basket.
Okay, Janelle wants to explain the basket.
So what she's describing right now, I want to describe to you. So we have seeds in here. I'm going to pass this around so you can really like touch it, get your hands in it, check it out. So we have seeds, seed bowls where the seeds come out of. There's some spun yarn, the shive, the inner woody core that we're breaking away from that retted flax. Here is some flax. Here's some partially processed, and here's that tow. You'll see a light color and a dark color. From the tow, many biocomposites can be made. You'll also see paper in here that is made from the tow. And then the tow and the lung line can be spun, of course, to make a yarn. And I have some wrapped around our handmade paper here. Here's some actual hand-spun stuff. You'll see a little ball of it here. And a mini, like we're working slow, and the drop spindle that I created it on. So I'm gonna pass this around. I want you to kind of just put it on your lap, dig in. If you want to talk more about them, Jackie will help assist bringing this around.
Yeah. Justin, are you going to talk about using shive at all?
It'll be in some of the components.
Okay, cool.
That'll be the fun part.
Then I'm going to pass it off to you. Yeah. Do we want to do questions about flax and then
Yeah, we'll do Q&A.
questions? Q&A? Anyone have a question? Yeah.
I'm wondering what kind of like yardage you get per acre, or I don't know what calculus you use. Like how much cloth maybe could a field
Yeah, it's $1 million question.
produce?
What did that sign say? How many
I
t-shirts
cannot
did we get
remember.
out of a hectare? I don't know the answer to that question. It's the short answer to that question. Because I think more in terms of like how many tons of fiber. And since I'm not planning to be the spinner, I don't know how much stuff. Dave Cook, do you know the answer to that question? Dave, do you know the answer to that question? How many yards of cloth from an acre of flax?
You can make 50 pairs of jeans.
Okay, 50 pairs of jeans.
Yeah, so
And the jeans take about, it's
That's
okay,
a lot.
thank
about
you.
2.5, about 2.5 yards. So
2.5 yards, so
100,
150,
200 yards.
100, 200 yards from an acre. Yeah, it's significant. Yeah, we had a weaver in the room, so. Anyone else? Yeah.
When this equipment that you're showing, cutting and harvesting the flax, is it only cutting the stems and laying them down? Is it not harvesting the seed? Does the seed just like fall on the ground?
Good question. It is pulling the flax. It does not cut it.
Oh, okay.
So that's the first, and one of the reasons you need this crazy piece of equipment is because you don't cut it. It does not harvest the seeds, that's true. You generally harvest for the highest quality fiber before the seed is ripe. Although you could let the seed become ripe and then combine for seed and harvest if you were cutting it. And there are people who are experimenting with that with oil flax seed. They're combining for seed and then cutting. You don't end up with these neat little round bales, so you end up with a different quality of fiber because of the way the plant is treated in harvest and post-harvest.
Got it.
And
I guess
also-
you want the root.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of don't, like you don't use the root, so it doesn't pull up the whole root,
But
and
it
you
protects the
don't actually
fiber.
use the root.
Yeah.
But, and there's a lot of consternation about this. People talk. The fiber goes all the way to the soil line. So, and it grows to be about a yard tall. So at scale, if you're cutting your plant 3 inches above the ground, you're giving up 3 inches of a 36-inch plant. That's a significant amount of your harvest. You know, that's 5 or 10% of your harvest, depending on where you cut it. And it's valuable, so you don't want to give that up. Also, there's a lot of, I don't know that there's any proof on this, but there might be, that actually pulling it the way the moisture is held in the plant and the way the fiber responds to that creates a higher quality fiber. I do know that like the Europeans who are third, fourth, and fifth generation pull it. So that's what we're modeling.
And I think it's important to talk about what amounts of components come out of this plant. So it's around 19, possibly
Yeah,
25 if you're really lucky, right? But really, like, let's just say 19.
The business
flex
plan,
fiber.
yeah, the business plan, the business model is for like 19% long line, 10% tow, 57% shive. Okay, shive is a big problem here. Somebody got to make something with it because you have a truckload a day at the mill. It's like a lot. You get a lot. And then there's 4% is immature seed, which can go into animal feed. And then there's the dust. So there's so that last few percentages, immature seed and dust. Dust is collected and can go into like a commercial composting operation as a brown. So it's zero waste at the mill, which is kind of amazing. You tour these big mills in Europe, there's no dumpster. It's so cool. It's like, oh, there's a garbage can like in the kitchen, but there's no dumpster.
What year was the vehicle made, the process?
The Polar, no, they're nearer than that. I think the Polar was in the early 2000s, and I think it's 2008. And I'm not sure about the Turner off the top of my head, but they're relatively new. They do last forever because you don't drive them very much. You use them for a couple weeks out of the year. So what you look at is how many field miles they have on them.
And one thing you mentioned about harvesting the seed, like there are more high-tech machines that can gather that seed in the moment of pooling and contain it, and it filters down, and then so that there is that possibility.
That machine's crazy.
Insanely expensive.
We just saw that machine. That machine's crazy. It's like a factory on wheels. It's
Yeah.
huge, and there's an 8-year wait to get one.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So the linen industry in Europe is thriving?
absolutely. So the linen industry in Europe is thriving, and the reason they're talking to us is because they can't meet demand. If they could meet demand, why would they help us? But there's so much demand for this raw material in industries other than linen that they can't grow enough, and they're limited by geography. And also flax it's a 7-year rotation, so you can only plant it in a single field once every 7 years, and especially in Europe where it's been grown generationally without interruption, you have to do that to tamp down disease pressure. We're planning to start with a 4-year rotation here, and as we scale, extend it to 7 years, because we don't have the same disease pressure that they have, and we need to get the industry off the ground, but we want to make sure we extend it so that we don't create a problem. Yeah.
Forgive me if I misunderstood this, but the mill that you're hoping to build is a processing mill, fiber processing mill. Are there any domestic mills in the U.S. right now that spin linen?
Not to my knowledge, although every day you find out something new. I don't believe there are any long line spinning mills in even North America today. There is somebody who is working toward that goal pretty seriously, so hopefully she'll achieve it. There are weavers. There's one sitting in the back of the room who knows how to weave bast fibers. So there are weavers, so we need to just fill the gaps. Yeah.
I was told once by a mill guy flax adds nitrogen to the soil. Is that true?
That it adds what?
Do they like puts nitrogen in the soil?
It's not a nitrogen fixer. But it does not take very much nitrogen out of the soil, and that's a huge benefit for a crop. It does other really wonderful things for the soil. It will pull heavy metals out of the soil, so for lead remediation, it's very effective. So in an urban environment, you know, it grows easily and it will remediate soil. It's much easier to take a contaminated plant material and move it off than it is to take up the top 8 inches of soil. So that's pretty cool. It also supports the mycorrhizal fungi. Did I say it right? Farmers in the room, did I get it right? And it also gets most of its moisture just from the top 3 inches of soil. So if the crops following it will have a better, the soil will be less dehydrated. I'm sure that's not the right technical term, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Do you know commercially like what it's commonly rotated with? Since that's the price.
Remember what the crop rotation
Yes,
was?
corn, soy, wheat, peas,
Alfalfa.
yeah,
In Europe, they grow a lot
Hemp.
of sugar beets.
sugar beets, a lot of things, a lot of things. They really preferred wheat and hemp prior, often, but wheat, they loved.
It's good with other
Peas.
with small grains and peas, and it's good with alfalfa. There's a list somewhere that I could
But
dig
that's-
up and tell you later. It's in my Google Drive. All right, really good. Any other questions? Let's have Justin talk.
So yeah, let's hand it over to Justin.
How is this all going to connect, Justin?
Well, what I'm excited about, when you asked me to you said, hey, let's do a collab for this. You'll see, we are material nerds at Common Object, and there's a lot of these objects that you'll see that will pull over that I'm not quite sure what part of the plant this is. So I'm going to learn as well. I know that we're all going to be kind of learning here together. So that's what I was hoping. We're going to have a lot of showing and telling, and you can correct me, and
Absolutely.
we'll kind of work through it. So first of all, very excited to be here. My name is Justin Beitzel. I'm with Common Object Studio. We're a small studio in Baltimore, so just 2 hours away, not too far. Tegan, who's going to be helping hand some stuff out here and helped us with the research today, helps us in Baltimore, and then my business partner Fernando is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So we are a studio that focuses on industrial product. So we design for some of the biggest furniture manufacturers in the world, and we design objects that are really high volume pieces a lot of times. One thing that as a studio we have to do is be really knowledgeable about the materials and the impact of those materials, because as you are scaling up, every single little moment that you add is huge impact overall. I think just a quick example, the first thing I designed, I was so proud. I was in my internship, and I designed this beautiful desk screen that went on the back of very boring. But for me, I was really excited, and I did the math on the first sale that we did, and they sold 100,000 units, and it was I think something I had to measure it in acres of landfill that I was filling up with it. And so you understand, as I started to have that, the choices I make here are really big. They're tiny to me when I'm working through my little design, but when it gets into the world, there's these huge impacts that you don't necessarily think of. So at Common Object, when I started this studio with Fernando, we really said, how do we take this this process of industrial design and really focus on sustainability and community, and understanding the impact of both of those as we work through all of our products. And so some projects that we get, we have to really fight to get any kind of sustainability story in. We have to really fight to lower our impact. And others are a little easier, they really are hiring us to kind of come in and bring that expertise. So what I wanted to share very quickly was how this connects to PA Fiber Shed, or sorry, yeah, for PA Flax Project. So this project that we did was a case study around how do we, no one was asking us to do this, but we said, how do we pull the goodness that we're learning about in these natural materials that are local to us into a case study that we can show maybe a world that we want to build towards, and a world that we've already maybe had in the past, but how do we put that into a context that's relevant today? So we're building this brand called Okatera, and I'm just going to quickly walk through that. So you're seeing this project, it grew from this idea of what can we source within 100 miles of Baltimore to create a furniture brand. So we found a wool farm just outside of Collegeville that we're working with, called Willow Creek Farm, to source our wool from. And we found in that process there's a lot of waste wool that they had. Could we pull that in and use that for something? We also looked for what's the structure of this. So we found a ton of waste wood in Baltimore and in Philly as well. So we worked with a company to actually really pull that into a system that could work and could scale with us. And as we're doing that, we're learning more and more about the systems that we are working with. For instance, going out and visiting the farm, like that was something that as a designer, it's so foreign for us. We are so far away from the soil and from touching where this stuff comes from. Going out and seeing Melissa and talking to her about her troubles with getting organic certified was such a huge reveal to me. So we've been really pushing to understand how these little decisions that we're making trickle the whole way down through our supply chain. So just a few images of some sheep looking confused at our furniture here. And this journey that we went on, it led us to this really interesting place where we put this out into the world, and we sold a few of them at first, right? And but really we got a lot of attention, like, what are you guys doing here? What are you working on? This is a weird system. And it felt like, it's not revolutionary, but it's something that we wanted to push into. As part of that, we're really focusing on how do you create objects that can be regionally created and regionally repaired and keep them in service as long as they can. So focusing on what are the details that allow these things to come apart and then possibly be put back into the earth or put back into use for a longer term. And it's allowed us to have this journey through material exploration. Here we're using a lot of the waste wool that we found to make these acoustic products. So we just got a grant, we jumped into the grant world of creating acoustics from waste wool, and over 200,000 tons of it is burned every year because it's the wrong fiber size, it's the wrong length, wrong color, it's not merino, it's Shetland, right? And so you still have these beautiful properties, but it's not actually able to be used because of so many reasons that are beyond kind of a lot of farmers' control. So this is kind of our, where we've been exploring and pushing, and you can see here, this is kind of all the elements together. This was an exploration we did with hemp, and you can see it's a hempcrete, so all natural, all biodegradable end of life. And then we also covered it with a linseed oil at the end. And that's what we're going to get to today. There's a lot of this stuff that we're pushing into that is using the different parts of the plant, from the fiber to the oil, and we'll get to kind of see that as we go here. But this led us to this place where we're at now, which is this collection of furniture that we are building into. How do we create a whole system that can be completely local? Well, thanks.
Yeah.
yeah, we should have brought the furniture. that can be fully local and create a system that can really give back in some kind of a way. So something that we are always asking is how, you mentioned the word regenerative, and it's a conversation a lot of people are having. It's something that's buzzy in a lot of ways. And for us, it's like a mentality of like, okay, we might not be there right now, but what are the steps that would need to be true to get us work to a world that a product, that an object, that a building, that a plant, that a farm is giving back at every step of the process. So our goal with Okoterra is to build and sequester soil, to increase biodiversity on the farms that we're working with, to support farmers in our local area so we're not shipping things around the world as much, to grow local circular systems, and then the big one that flax can really help with is that how can we make a system that ends in nutrition back into the soil, and that's a big one that we're trying to work through, and these flax gives us a lot to play with there. All right, so you heard my spiel.
You were talking and I was just thinking, when we were in Europe, we visited Libico. Are you familiar with them? Libico's big linen brand, big linen brand. And we visited, and one of the questions I asked, I was like, well, what level of the supply chain do you get involved? Because they're weavers, right? And they were like, the yarn. But we own our spinning mill in Poland, and the farmers, they come here for conferences once a week because they live right down the road. And so I'm like, oh, so you are involved at the farm level with that's part of the whole. And that I think is what you're saying. It's exactly what you're saying. It's this idea of design being rooted in literally the earth where the material comes from.
Totally.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
And I think that that's regenerative because ideas are regenerative, relationships are regenerative.
Yeah, I think I'm often wondering. I always feel like I'm such the dumb person in the room when I'm kind of talking to these farmers, especially. I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm going in and asking them what do you have that I can use? And then once they tell me, I have to figure out what I can do with that thing. And so we're trying to kind of build from a different perspective, understanding what the need and the things that can grow here, in our bioregion. I often ask, what would a chair look like in Baltimore, designed with our bioregion in mind, versus a chair designed in LA with their bioregion in mind? And I think it's just an interesting concept to think through, and it's one that I think you have to understand a deeper level of, or get closer to the ground in that way. Yeah.
Right, you have to understand your regional materiality. We don't think that everything's so global now. We don't think about, if you live in a region, when we were in Europe and you're in a region where there's flax everywhere. It's everywhere, it's growing everywhere. Everybody knows what it is. You don't have to tell anybody that linen is flax. And there's all these that's where all the great designers are for linen, right? And no big surprise because they're connected to the materiality of their region. They're inspired by it. And they have relationships throughout that supply chain that are important. And that, I think, that's the quote, soft side of what we're trying to do here is it's not just about making a sustainable product. A sustainable product is important, but there are a lot of ways you can do that. It's really about creating a regional supply chain, a regional hub, something that is meaningful beyond the object itself.
I think something we say, we've realized that as designers we can affect, the value of an object. We want to create objects that are really desirable, that people want to hang on to and love and hold. But to get to that, the system around the object is really often what dictates all of the pieces that go into it. So I think we're trying to, how do we build those systems that then can create bigger influence there? Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna ask what, so because flax and hemp, you know, they're really similar. They're different, but they're really similar. And then, so in terms of what you can make with those two plant materials, so they're both what is called a bast fiber, which means that the plant, that means the fiber comes from the stem of the plant. And the plant has a woody core, and then there's fiber around, a fiber bundle around that woody core. And they have really similar qualities. I'm partial to flax,
Right.
but I don't have anything against hemp. So, but,
Uh-huh.
so you mentioned hemp, so I'm curious what you use that uses hemp. So I can sell you on flax.
Yes, exactly. So I'll move back here. And then we'll get into some of the like flax fiber components. But this right here was a really fun one to find. Down in North Carolina, it's one of the few places that make rope out of hemp. So we had to search kind of the U.S. And it was like the only place that was really using it in fiber, and it was like the first entry point was rope. So we use it for like suspension in the bottom of a chair, and then we also use it ground up in these, you can see them, these little like gumdrop seats here. Yeah, so that's
Yeah, cool. Is it fiber? Is it like toe fiber that's ground up in the little?
So no, that's actually the waste from
It's
around
It's the herd.
Yes, the
You're
herd.
using herd, which is shy.
Mhm.
Herd is hemp for shy.
Yes.
Or shy is flax for herd. Yeah, so yeah, you can use flax shy for that. You could get it right here in Pennsylvania.
That sounds amazing. So we're gonna have to switch. We're making deals
We're
right here.
closer
in
than
front
North
of
Carolina.
so
And then the fabrics, of course, you know, I mean, linen fabric it makes a really great upholstery.
Of course, yeah. I think that's one of our dreams is to build on that. And as we've been growing, we've started talking to a lot of mills around the area, and they have linen in it, but they have no way to get it locally here, right?
Right.
Is at the moment.
Yeah, that's true.
So something that with this, it's like, okay, why does all this, why does what you're doing matter to us? And I think there's a huge piece of it that goes beyond design. And I'm going to talk about kind of these three things. Like one, that work that you're doing builds the health of our materials. You create materials that are healthier and better for us. The sustainability aspect of this, and also the beauty. Like you'll see with a lot of these objects that I'm going to show, there's a beauty that comes to it that this fiber brings that you can't get from a lot of other pieces. So I think Tegan's going to start passing some stuff around here. But I want to just share, like, you think about the fiber, you think of linen, right? What we are, I love upholstery, and I'm really getting deeper into that as like how to build that into our system. But then there's all these other components that we've been exploring and been really close to, from acoustic panels to different composites here. So I'm going to talk about three different elements. So there's finishes, veneers, and then structural materials. So let me just quickly talk about the finishes. So I'm guessing that some of you, there's some woodworkers in the space-ish, yes, maybe. I come into this space and I'm like, oh man, it's so beautiful. I'm not a woodworker, I'm a designer, I'm a furniture designer. I can make stuff out of wood, but I do not consider myself like at the level to call myself a woodmaker. But with that, there's linseed oil, which is really an amazing creation, especially boiled linseed oil. And I just wanted to pass around these different objects. This is from a company, is it pronounced Browns? Bronze? Bruns, thank you. Yeah. So I don't know, you've been talking to them in some regard, from what I understand. But they make this amazing product, and there's multiple different ways of finishing wood with linseed oil. Some of them have accelerants in it to make it dry faster. Others have this is a more like dialed down material list. So you can add just some pigments to it, and it creates these really beautiful colors across the board. And I was curious with this, like, you won't be using the oil in your first rounds, right?
So likely not, although we have been talking to Mikkel and also to Natalie from American Flax, all the people who use and want to make linseed oil. It's a fairly simple operation to press for oil, and one of the common dual purpose varieties of flax is for fiber and oil. So that, I don't think that's not our first stage production. We're laser focused on fiber, but it's a very likely second stage.
That's cool. Okay. Yeah, that's what we want to use. So we use linseed oil because it's a really durable finish, but also what I love is that it is so easy to repair. So that's something that I think we often we're used to these like poly, gloss, basically encapsulating our wood with some kind of plastic. And what that does is it does make it pretty durable. It makes it very durable, but when it cracks, when it fails, it's very hard to repair. So one thing that's nice about linseed oil is that as it dries out over time, or as it gets damaged, I have it on my floor at home, and you just add a little bit more, polish it in, and it creates this really beautiful story of repair and of longevity, that you can see the patina over time, you can repair it, but it takes a different outlook on your objects, right? You need to be able to say, I have this object that I'm going to take care of, like a leather boot maybe, or something like that. So you have to have a different mentality around the objects that you're designing. We also talk about paints. This product is used heavily in the historic building restorations. And what I love about it is that you can use it on metal, you can use it on brick. It's a breathable material. So instead of encapsulating and getting the water trapped underneath, it becomes this membrane that allows water in and out. And it's a bit of it feels like a bit of a miracle oil to me. So we're incorporating into our work because of the health benefit, it has low VOC. We're really pushing to have no red list chemicals in our work. And so that means that we have to focus on everything, from the stain to the glue to every little piece of the product. And one thing we talk about with this is, like, I love when I find out that something has historic context and background, because we've done all this before. We've created objects that are beautiful and are from our bioregion. That's what we've done for centuries, right, up until recently. So I feel like our job is to reinterpret that into a modern context. All right, moving on. Now we're going to talk about veneers. So, Tegan, if I could hold one of those, actually. I'll take the light one, thank you. So this is a company in California called ECOA. I should really, they're not paying me to promote these, by the way. It's just, I'm excited about them. I was actually going to ask you which part of the plant this is.
Yeah, it's a really good question. This is fiber. Could be-
They say fiber on the.
Yeah, it could be, I don't know what the binder is. It could be long fiber or short fiber. So it's that bundle of fiber on the outside of the wing core. Do you know what the binder is?
I think it's a plastic binder. So that's one thing we're going to learn as we go. There's like all sorts of levels of durability that need to happen with this kind of stuff. From some can be biodegradable, some, right? It's like this is a plastic. What I love about it, each company has their own story around it too.
This is likely, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to this question, but this is probably long fiber.
Okay.
Because it doesn't have a whole bunch of, if you look at it as it's coming around, you'll notice it doesn't have a bunch of tiny little curlicues in it, which you would get from shorter fiber. So it looks more like it's a long fiber that's organized vertically.
You can see the light from the
Yeah.
From a design perspective, what happens with it is this ends up fitting on these huge walls, imagine like a hospital or in an executive suite, right, where typically they'd use a veneer wood. And so, nothing against wood at the Wood Museum, but this is a fast-growing plant, right, and this creates the natural feel of this, the variety that we see in nature.
It's just more ecologically sound than wood, not the polymer binder. There is a lot of research being done on plant-based binders to accomplish this sort of thing. There's a company out of Germany that's pretty cool, Green Books. Are you familiar with them? They're working on some plant-based binders for that. I mean, who knows? It's going to take a while to get there.
Yeah, and I think though, like as we work towards that future, these elements I'm excited for because they get us another step closer, right? So the other one that is going around is linoleum. This is marnoleum, which is made, I can't remember, it's Europe, but Forbo company. And I don't know, I always thought of linoleum as like the cheap plastic stuff on my parents' on their kitchen. And but this stuff is so beautiful. It has, if you smell it, if it hasn't gone by you, it has a nice smell to it. And this is the oil mixed with pine rosin. And it's calendared onto a backer that creates that. So this is a completely bio-based material with a really beautiful properties and so many different colors offered there. And then finally, we're going to pass around some components that are structural. So this is where we get into, if you think of, if anyone's seen like fiberglass layups, or if you think of like a carbon fiber, right, where you're mixing, you're having the strength of the fiber really showing here, right? The tension of the fiber mixed with the plastic or the resin creates this really strong piece that's beautiful too. So we have a few elements that are going around here, and those that look kind of like a carbon fiber layup, that is a injection molded piece actually. So they lay up the fiber in cross-dimensional forms, and then they inject a plastic, like a PET, into that. So they can actually get the fiber, I think, to be up around 70-80% of the actual structure. And it makes it really strong. And you can see these are clear plastic, so you can actually see the grain of the fiber in there as well.
That's fascinating.
Right? It's like, I love it as a concept, and they're trying again to build towards a PLA or a plastic that would be able to biodegrade, but the stuff we're passing around is from like the stuff in your water bottles, essentially. Yeah.
They all want long fiber for that. That's what I've come to learn that's very interesting, because when I first started learning about flax, everyone was like, oh, the long fiber all goes for linen, and then the short fibers can go into biocomposites. Then you start talking to people in biocomposites, and they're like, we want long fiber. You're like, oh, okay. All the long fiber, everybody wants the long fiber because it's the best, but they want the strength of it. So it's the length of the fiber. Well, there are several things that go to strength, but the length of the fiber being one of them, because you just have less break points, right? If you have short fibers, you have to overlap them, so for any continuous length, you have many points that are easy to break, whereas the longer the fiber, the stronger. And the more lustrous also, because longer fibers reflect more light. This I learned as a costume designer. Silk is the most lustrous because the fibers are so incredibly long, right? And then it's the flax is right up in there. Because the longer the fiber, the more light it reflects. It's fascinating. So from a design perspective, it's desirable.
Yeah, I think as you look at that, like you can see they're trying to show off the fiber layout, right? And I think you can also see the different weaves that they're putting in there. I think that's an interesting I know we have some fiber people in the room. It's an interesting world to look into. How do we start to cross these flexible fiber layups with the actual solid hard product, hard good layup? So I think there's a really fun materials exploration that can go into a lot of this that we're excited to be a part of. And then one more that we're going to talk about is this Ayla case here. Is that passing around now? Okay, awesome. So those phone cases on the left, this is something that gets annoying and confusing in product sustainability world. The difference between something being bio-based versus biodegradable is they do not mean the same thing in any way, right? So Pela, they've done an amazing job. They've created a product that they've proved can biodegrade. Over time, it goes down to nothing. But it's only 30% bio-based. So they have a very small amount of flax in it. I'm curious what you think is
I
down.
own one of their phone
You
cases.
do? Okay. What do you think's in the, is it
I think
sheet?
it's the shive, yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming it's just like the flecks that are barely in there, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's what it is. It shows, I don't know how, those are dark, so it will show up. The light flecks in those, I think, are shy.
And so where this other piece has about 80% bio-based material, but at the end of life, it's not really, probably not going to be able to be recycled or composted in any way. So we're always,
Mind-boggling. Wait, so what else is in the Pela case that makes it compostable?
so you can create compostable, compostable plastics from fossil fuels.
But doesn't that just create microplastics?
So they,
So
oh,
biodegradable.
Taken would be a great one to pass this off to.
Just because something is biodegradable doesn't mean that it's free from microplastics. And also something that is compostable can still contain microplastics. Compostability means that some of the nutrients in the material can be uptaken by the soil, be reused in plant matter. Biodegradability just means that it can break down. So microplastics are a huge issue. But yeah, so, and for Pela, the phone cases, I did a lot of digging. They keep it a secret. I did a lot of digging, y'all. I went down like a rabbit hole for a while. But yeah, so.
That's fascinating. Well, I will tell you, my dress is biodegradable and compostable.
Beautiful.
And is plastic free.
And it's gorgeous too, so.
And made locally. Okay, so, but it is a really complex landscape to navigate. How to move toward true sustainability. And I'm down a pretty deep rabbit hole in my purchasing habits. I basically can't buy anything anymore. I'm like a deer caught in the headlights. I'm like, I have to do some more research. But I think that goes to people like us, transparency is really important. And it is really important, we right now, as we scale agriculture, we're trying to make decisions around organic versus conventional. And if you're gonna scale to 5,000 acres, are you gonna end up having to use herbicide? And if you do use herbicide, what herbicide is it gonna be? And what kind of effect does that herbicide have? And we're in the trial stages of that now, but that's to be transparent about every step you take and what the difficulties are. If you say, so this past season we grew fairly large scale, 10 acres conventional and 10 acres organic. And the organic yield was half of what the conventional yield was. So then you have to say, okay, so can we charge twice as much? And because we live in a capitalist society, you have to figure out how to survive as a business to make any progress. And so then you have to say, well, if I'm going to use herbicide, what herbicides are approved and what are their effects? And is that a line I'm willing to cross? And is that something I'm willing to say out loud, right? And put on my website, right? and be like, this is what we're doing in order to get there. That's what keeps me honest, you know, because there's certain things like I'll say out loud, I'll say this out loud. We're struggling with the conventional versus organic as we scale. But when I got to the herbicide that causes breast cancer, I was like, yeah, I'm not putting that on my website, so then I can't do it. Right? It's complicated,
Yeah.
very complicated.
And I think that complication, it goes up on each layer, right, and it stacks the whole way up through, and I think that's where, we run into a lot, like, with this product line that we had developed, we were able to really say, we want to create something that's kind of from the ground up and is kind of small, but then now as we're scaling that, it's the same kind of questions, and you realize how quickly you can get to somewhere that's maybe not our ideal in some way. But I think Fernando and I always talk about, with any customer we work with, or with even this system that we're talking about, okay, what's the step? How do we all take just a step forward towards something that's a bigger, that will eventually become a bigger leap? And sometimes these projects can be like, feel so overwhelming, the decisions can feel so overwhelming, but yeah, we just have to do the best we can with them. That's it. I have all these wonderful materials are made with the flax plant, and I think I learned a lot today from this. I've actually never seen flax in person before this, so.
We'll send you home with some. I mean, usually it's like you get obsessed with it after you see it in person, not before, so congratulations.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, any, I guess, questions? Do we have time for that? Yeah, okay.
So I saw one of your objects, the hempcrete stools that you guys designed, which were very beautiful. Could you use shive in a similar way as like an aggregate alternative in casting concrete or something like that?
I would imagine we could. I think one thing that's nice about hemp, not to
It's fine, there's lots of nice things about it.
is that it has a woody porous, like you can get bigger chunks in some way.
Bigger plant.
Bigger plant, right? So that's helpful there, but we also you need a lot of the small dusty stuff too. So I could see it definitely happening in that way. I mean, really, what the hemp does in that mixture, it lightens everything up. It absorbs the water. It helps create that structure as well. So we've done it with different chop levels, basically, like some finer herd or more or less water, more or less lime. It's basically a slurry of lime, hemp, and water. So lime is in the rock, right? And then the curing time depends on the heat, the humidity, all those things. These took about 4 days till we could really get them out of the mold, and then it was like probably 20 days till they were fully cured in that way.
And what was the chop level you used?
It was around, I would say, like 3/4 inch in length, and then maybe three-quarter inch chunks, something like that.
I mean, you could use shive. You'll just have to come up with a different recipe.
Right, which I would love to
But
play
it'd be
with. I think
slightly
it'd be-
different.
Yeah.
It's, flax shive is used in the same way that hemp hurd is used for a lot of things. And it's just a different ratio in the mix because flax is a much smaller plant, much, much smaller. I mean, I don't know if you've seen a hemp plant, but I would say hemp is like a straw and flax is like a toothpick. They're very different in size.
You can see the size here. It's thin.
It's
I
tiny,
think I have a
flax
few
is
of those.
tiny.
industry likes hemp too because it's an easy carbon negative number for them. So, you know, that's one of the ones where it's like there's been enough research put into, so they can put a broad number saying this, you know, much acreage stores this much carbon, and therefore your product is carbon negative, so therefore you don't have to buy carbon credits, which are like financial offsets, which are ridiculous. But you know, it's like it's a great material at its essence that industry is kind of taking and going, we're just going to use this for the lumber. Even though it has a bunch of really interesting properties, there's things that you can use other shy bits, and yeah, so that's also why hempcrete is becoming more popular as well, because it's a easy number.
Yeah, hemp is a tolerant plant, so it sequesters more carbon. All plants sequester carbon.
Yeah.
So how does the Flax Project deal with this, hemp is similar but different enough, and this challenge that was just mentioned about the financial offset?
So flax is also a carbon capture product, and there's also been research done on it. I don't worry about that with it because flax and hemp are used differently. They can be used in a lot of similar applications, but flax doesn't produce exactly what hemp does, and hemp doesn't produce exactly what flax does. So there's room for both. Yeah, I mean,
I would say that flax also has less hurdles from
Right.
the like regulatory side, right? So
you don't have to get, you don't have to worry about testing flax when you're growing flax.
I've worked with farmers for our hemp up in Western Maryland, and they're growing. They were growing their first hemp fields there, and they were so worried about having any kind of, you know, like if they get any testing positive there, they have to destroy the crop. And so it's like, it's a scary thing right now for them, and I think eventually that will go away, but right now farmers are still, they're kind of scared of that.
It's such a stupid system. They should let farmers grow hemp. But also, like, flax shide is used in different applications than hemp hurd. So, like, flax shide is really, people like it for horse bedding because it's finer, you know. It's used in garden mulch. It's just used for, anyway, it's used for a lot of the same things. It's also used for some different things, and it's a similar material with a different feel. So it's sort of like different qualities of textile as well. Like wool is fabulous. You're not going to make the same thing out of wool that you make out of flax. Yes.
I'm intrigued by something you just said. Shive used as garden mulch.
Yeah.
Is it commercially available?
I don't know.
Probably not.
It is in Europe. I don't know if people sell it here, but it makes a great garden mulch. I can attest to that. I put a lot of it on my garden. It also, like overrided flax or even tow that you don't feel like cleaning up for something else makes a really great weed suppression now. Like I put it down in my back alley and like everywhere else the weeds grew and there nothing. So the other thing about, because flax is a finer fiber, it's a finer plant, so I don't mean fine as in, oh, you're fine, I mean like less heavy, right? It makes a finer product, so it is similar, but it just has a different feel. It just has a different market.
I'm thinking of, there was actually a textile company that asked, when they saw this was here tonight, they're like, oh, I wish you would have told us because we would love to be part of that, you know. And so next time we will.
Yeah.
But they have, a lot of their mixtures are hemp, flax, and wool. Like that combo, they kind of dial it in to make different feelings, right? And so we, I think there's like such a great argument that these all exist in a system.
Right, it's not an either or. It doesn't have to be an either or. It's a yes and, right? I actually think that indigo dyed tablecloth hemp and flax that Dave.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a, let me see if I get it right, it's an Italian hemp warp with a French flax fill that was woven in Bedford, Pennsylvania.
Red line, actually.
Red Lion, that's right. We made that mistake in the car, which took a lot longer than in this conversation. Anyway, so if you wanna like check that out when you go over there, it's a beautiful textile, so that's why I say it's not either or, it's a yes and. You know, they all play well together for a better world. I mean,
Did you say you can rotate hemp and flax?
you could grow hemp and flax on the same farm, yep.
So definitely yes and, because
Right, yeah. Any other questions? All right.
One more question. In all of your research that you did with all of these materials, do you have any projects you can talk about that you plan on using them in the future?
So it's funny, I told Heidi this earlier, like every time I talk to somebody who I'm like, oh, you put some kind of bio-based aggregate into your product. I'm like, hey, there's this project coming up here that maybe at the right scale we can start to like implement into it. So I feel like my job as a designer is to start those conversations. Nobody is looking for this. As far as they're not going out and looking, you're having to go out and talk to people about it, right? And so I think that what I'm realizing is like, oh, every time I talk to somebody that could use this, as a designer, it's my job to be educated and say, this is valuable, this could be an amazing story, right? So nothing I can talk about immediately, but there are a few people who are interested in how do we kind of support, there's definitely people who are in industry who are asking how do we support this system. There are some that like the Lingrove, right? Like they're one that we've talked to about doing an experimental piece, and something that's more just showcasing the material and the projects, but I'm hoping something turns into it from this. Like, our studio is really trying to be seen and to be the go-to place for when somebody wants to implement these kind of thoughts and thinking into their work. And so I think that's where this is very mutually beneficial for us.
Yeah, it's an interesting, trying to build a supply chain from nothing is fascinating. It's an interesting problem. Because, you know, globally, sure, there are a lot of people who are using flax fiber for all sorts of things. You know, it's going into automotive panels, it's going into boats, it's going into all sorts of things. But their minimum order quantity is, I'm like 5 years away from that. So this is great because we can start on a really small scale and make it a sample product, you know, when we're in the beginning stages that is like totally regional. And scale to produce it. It's that chicken and the egg.
Yeah, but I think what we've realized is that you can design for scale, right? You can choose objects. If you start with a material, we can say, oh, well, what object is at X price point and at X scale, like a production, and start thinking in that way, in a way that's strategic. And I think that's where we have to kind of do to get that first step at least. Hoping.
Stay tuned.
All right. Thank you everyone so much.